Golden chandeliers sparkled above the grand ballroom. The marble floor shone like glass, and roses from Paris filled the air with fragrance. At the center of it all stood Aldis Hodge, the millionaire everyone admired. With a slow, confident smile, Aldis lifted his hand. In his palm gleamed 4 unlimited black credit cards. A wave of gasps swept through the crowd. Who would he give them to? One by one, he handed the cards to the glamorous women, Sharon Taylor, Kristen Booth, and Amanda Crew. Each face lit up with pride, and the guests clapped at the dazzling show of wealth. To everyone, this looked like the beginning of a fairy tale. But in the corner, silent and unnoticed, stood the maid, Alona Tal. She wore no jewels, no silk gown, yet soon, she would do something that no one in this ballroom would ever forget. Before we move forward, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? And what time is it right now? And don't forget to like and subscribe to Black and Wronged for more heart-touching stories. Let's get started. The women raised their cards proudly, their laughter echoing through the marble hall. Sharon Taylor whispered about a mansion on the coast. Kristen Booth dreamed of diamonds glittering around her neck. Amanda Crew imagined gowns from Paris stitched just for her. Each card was a promise of endless wealth. At the center, Aldis Hodge watched them closely. To the crowd, he looked like a king enjoying his game. His charming smile fooled everyone. But deep inside, Aldis carried something the world could not see, a loneliness he never admitted. The music played, the guests clapped, and the 4 women shined like stars. Yet not a single eye noticed the maid, Alona Tal, as she quietly moved between tables, refilling glasses and clearing plates. What the guests didn't know was that the real story was not about the cards, or the women, or the applause. It was about the question Aldis was about to ask, a question that would change the night forever. The room buzzed with laughter as the women boasted about what they would buy first. Aldis leaned back, sipping his wine, but his eyes slowly drifted away from the glitter and chatter. Then, his gaze landed on the maid, Alona Tal. She stood quietly in her plain uniform, clutching an empty tray. A playful, almost daring smile spread across Aldis Hodge's face. He raised his voice so the whole ballroom could hear. "Tell me, Alona," he asked, "if you had one of these cards, what would you do with it?" The air grew heavy. Glasses froze midair. Sharon Taylor, Kristen Booth, and Amanda Crew burst into soft laughter, whispering behind their jeweled hands. "Her with a black card?" One of them giggled. "She wouldn't even know how to use it," another smirked. All eyes turned toward Alona. For a brief moment, her hands trembled. The crowd waited for her silence. They waited for her to break. But instead, she opened her mouth and spoke words that would silence the entire ballroom. Alona Tal's voice shook at first, but her eyes held steady. She looked at Aldis Hodge, then at the glittering women in their gowns, and finally at the grand chandelier above. "I wouldn't take the card for myself," she said softly. Yet the words cut through the silence like glass. "I'd use it to build a shelter. For children who have no home. For mothers left with nothing but tears. For the hungry who sleep on the streets while so much food is wasted here." The ballroom fell silent. Even the music seemed to fade. Sharon Taylor, Kristen Booth, and Amanda Crew shifted uncomfortably, clutching their cards tighter, as if afraid someone might snatch them away. Their earlier giggles vanished, and for the first time in years, Aldis Hodge's smirk disappeared. He had expected greed, maybe a desperate wish for escape, but instead Alona had given him something he had never bought before. Truth. For a long moment, Aldis Hodge just stared at her. The golden light from the chandelier flickered across his face, but something else lit his eyes, something unfamiliar. He had expected laughter, maybe a plea for riches. Instead, he had heard compassion, words so simple yet heavier than diamonds. His mind drifted, back to his childhood, the endless halls of his father's estate, cold and echoing. He remembered the grand dinners, the priceless art on the walls, the way everyone smiled at his family's fortune, but never at him. Money had bought silence, not love, control, not warmth. And for the first time, standing there in that glittering ballroom, he wondered if everything he had built was nothing more than a cage made of gold. Around him, Sharon Taylor, Kristen Booth, and Amanda Crew tried to laugh it off, tossing shallow remarks into the air, but their voices sounded hollow. Their smiles felt empty, and in the quiet corner, Alona Tal stood with her tray lowered, her words still echoing in his heart. Days passed, but the ballroom moment would not leave Aldis Hodge's mind. The 4 women, Sharon Taylor, Kristen Booth, and Amanda Crew, flaunted their cards, whispering of villas and jewels, yet their laughter echoed empty in his ears. Late one evening, Aldis found himself walking down the quiet servants' hall of his mansion. For the first time, he stopped at the small door where Alona Tal lived. She opened it, surprised, clutching a worn apron. "I want to hear more," Aldis said simply. "About what you'd build, if you could." At first, she hesitated, thinking it was mockery. But something in his tone was different, softer, almost searching. Slowly, she told him about the abandoned warehouse she passed each day on her way home. She described her dream: small beds lined neatly, warm meals served daily, shelves of books, and a playground where children could laugh again. Her words painted a world richer than any diamond, a place where hope could live. And as she spoke, Aldis realized this maid carried more vision in her heart than all the millionaires he had ever known. The morning sun poured through the tall windows of the mansion, but this time Aldis's steps had a new weight, a new purpose. He called for a press conference, the kind usually reserved for new investments, art auctions or billion-dollar ventures. Cameras flashed as reporters filled the hall, waiting for another display of power and wealth. But when Aldis Hodge stepped to the podium, he didn't talk about profits or possessions. His voice was calm, yet it carried a strength that silenced the room. "I've decided to fund something new," he said. "Not another business, not another collection, but a shelter. A place for children with no home, for mothers with nowhere to go." And the idea came from someone most of you would overlook. Whispers rippled across the crowd. A maid? Could it be true? But Aldis didn't hesitate. For the first time, he wasn't speaking as a millionaire flaunting his wealth, but as a man inspired by kindness. Months later, the once abandoned warehouse stood transformed. Its walls were painted bright with colors chosen by children themselves. Laughter echoed through the halls where silence once lived. On opening day, Alona Tal stood at the entrance, her eyes shining with tears. She watched her son, little Elias, running across the new playground with other children, his laughter ringing like music. For the first time in years, his smile was wide, carefree, and full of hope. Mothers stepped inside the shelter, receiving warm meals and a safe bed. Some wept openly, hugging their children close. The air was no longer heavy with despair, it was alive with joy. And standing quietly among them was Aldis Hodge, not as the untouchable millionaire who once tossed out cards for show, but as a man who had learned the true meaning of wealth. The women, Sharon Taylor, Kristen Booth, and Amanda Crew, who once laughed, now looked on from a distance, their jeweled smiles unable to hide the emptiness in their hearts. Here, in this place built on compassion, Aldis finally felt rich. The chandelier in Aldis's ballroom had once shone brightest during displays of power, but now true light came from a place far humbler. The smiles of children, the laughter of mothers, and the quiet dignity of a maid who refused to stay invisible. Alona Tal's courage had turned a simple question into a movement of kindness. And Aldis Hodge, once trapped in gold and loneliness, discovered that real fortune was not in cards or jewels, but in the lives he touched. Even Sharon Taylor, Kristen Booth, and Amanda Crew, once wrapped in vanity, stood silent that day, realizing that glamour fades, but compassion remains. This story reminds us all. Sometimes the strongest voices come from the quietest corners, and true wealth is measured not by what we keep, but by what we give. Even if this story touched your heart, don't forget to